Story time about how my crazy sister tried to steal my husband and my child while I was in the army. My sister and I have always been competitive our entire lives. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. Send me on Instagram. Her and I actually didn't grow up together. We don't have the same mother. We actually met when we were teenagers, which is not a good time to meet your sister because you're already very insecure at that time. She was always a little bit insecure about her looks, and it got a lot worse when she met me. She was always comparing herself to me and asking my dad which one of us he thought was prettier. My dad, of course, would get really upset and tell her not to be like that, but I could tell that she was always judging me. Sometimes she would make fun of the way I dressed, and if I ever wore a tank top or a crop top, she would call me McChubby. Mind you, I am not chubby at all, and even if I was, it's still so wrong to call someone that. Fast forward 10 years later, I married the man of my dreams. We have a really good relationship and a 1-year-old. I joined the army straight out of high school, and I really love it. We finally got pregnant after 3 years of trying. I was told I was going to be stationed away for 2 months. My husband luckily has a job where he can work from home, and my mother lives really close to us, so I knew I was leaving the baby in good hands. My husband luckily supports me in everything I want to do, so he didn't have a problem with this. I would see my sister from time to time, but we never really hung out or anything, and she never really made an effort to meet our baby either. Last I'd heard, she'd been in a really bad relationship. Apparently, she even had to get a restraining order, and she had to move back home to live with my dad. When I finally ended up going overseas, my husband and I would Zoom every single day. This is when things took a dark turn. My husband told me that my sister came by one day to visit, and that she was full on flirting with him, telling him how good looking he is. Part 2 is up. Part 2 of how my sister tried to steal away my husband and my baby when I was stationed away. My husband told me that she came over and started flirting with him. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. Send me on Instagram. He asked me what he should do, and I told him to just act like normal. A few days later, my husband tells me that my sister comes over with a tray of lasagna, which she knows is his favorite dish. And here's the worst part. She brought a thong bikini and sat by the pool for hours. Apparently, she wanted to get a tan. Then she asked him if they could watch a movie together, but my husband made up an excuse saying that he had to get back on his laptop for work. He even took a video of her while she was lounging in the pool, and we both laughed at it. A few days after that, he tells me she comes over crying. Apparently, some guy wouldn't leave her alone, so she asked him if she could sleep over because she didn't feel safe. She decided to walk around the house in her underwear and an oversized t-shirt. But here's what really got to me. Apparently, she was making an effort to get to know the baby, so she would go out of her way to feed him and play with him. And out of nowhere, the baby calls her mama. She never made an effort to see the baby when I was there, so why was she making an effort now? Then my sister sent me a picture of my husband and the baby asleep on the couch. And she sends me another message saying, "Your husband is so beautiful." Part 3 of how my sister tried to steal away my husband and my baby when I was stationed away. After she sent me the picture of my baby and my husband sleeping on the couch, I asked her what she was doing there. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. Send me on Instagram. Then she had the audacity to tell me that she just wanted to help my husband out. I told her that he didn't need any help and that she could leave the house. That's when she asked me if I was insecure about her being around my husband since she's so attractive. As soon as she said that, I tried calling her, but she wouldn't answer. Then she decided to ignore my phone calls and messages for 2 days. So I called my husband and told him what she said. The first thing he did was reassure me and told me that I had nothing to worry about and that he would tell her to leave himself. I didn't want her to start any drama in front of the baby, so I told my husband to just let her stay another night. Instead, I called my dear dad and I told him everything that she was doing. I even told my dad that he needed to go pick her up right away. My dad didn't even question me. He just went to get her. He knew exactly what she was like. 30 minutes later, I get a phone call from my husband laughing his head off. He tells me my dad came into the house and told her that she needed to leave with him. When she refused, my dad simply grabbed her by the arm and dragged her out of the house. And on the way out, he could hear my dad asking her what she thought she was doing. He even told her to stop walking around in her underwear around my husband. I only wish I could have seen it myself. But it doesn't end there. My sister decided to sneak out of my dad's house and back to mine. And this time she wore lingerie underneath a coat. When he opens the door, she takes off the coat, revealing the lingerie. My husband politely asked her to leave, but she said she knew he wanted her. Then he just shut the door in her face. I got home a few weeks after that, and I confronted my sister. She told me that I'm a bad wife for leaving my husband and my child, and that eventually he's gonna end up cheating on me. She denies having come to the house with the lingerie on. How should I handle the situation? Should I tell my dad or just let it go? Story time about how I kidnapped my boyfriend out of jealousy. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. Send me on Instagram. I met my boyfriend while we were both in school. The thing was that he had a girlfriend, so I was pretty much the other woman. He broke up with her 2 weeks after meeting me, and we began dating. I know, this was the first red flag. He promised me the world and told me that he would marry me right away. Well, it's been 2 years since that happened, and he still hasn't popped the question. I trusted this man blindly. 2 weeks ago, he started acting really strange. He started saying that I never understood him in the relationship, and that he was probably gonna need some space from me. And I recognized this because this was the same thing he told his ex when he met me. I tried to play it cool and not overreact. We didn't see each other for 2 days. On the second day, I get a phone call from his mother. That's when his mother goes on a rant about how unhappy he is in our relationship. And then she decided to reproach me and tell me that I've been holding him back from his career, which is not true. It's like she was just making things up as she went. Out of nowhere, she says that he doesn't want to see me anymore, that he couldn't do it to my face because he was just too afraid to break my heart. I called bull. I told her that he broke up with his ex because of me and that he was probably seeing another girl. She denied everything, of course, and she said the relationship hadn't been working for a long time. I told her that I wanted him to at least call me. That's when she said that he went on a 2-month trip and that he wouldn't be able to call me because he was overseas. The next day, she brought a box of all my stuff from his house. Part 2 is up. Part 2 of how I kidnapped my boyfriend out of jealousy. Disclaimer, is not my story time. I sent him on Instagram. After his mother called me to break up with me, she came over to my house the next day with all my stuff. I begged her to tell me where he was traveling and she wouldn't tell me. She told me not to call him ever again. I had known this woman for 2 years and she had never treated me this way. I was so hurt that I started to cry in front of her. That's when she hugged me and told me that this is the way that things had to be. Then she let it slip that he was just at his brother's house, which was an hour away. She apologized for how she treated me and that she had to break up with me on the phone instead of him. When she left, I got straight into my car and went to look for my boyfriend. When I got there, I rang the doorbell and guess who opens? My lying boyfriend. Then he says, and I quote, "Didn't my mom call you to tell you that I didn't want to be with you anymore?" That's when I said that she did. I called him a coward for not being able to break up with me to my face. Then he whispered, "I'm sorry." I asked him if he could get in the car with me and if we could just talk. He agreed and we decided to drive back to my place to talk. And that's when the idea popped into my head. I was simply gonna lock him inside my house until we got back together. When we got in, I locked all the doors and windows. And I hid the keys. Part 3 of how I kidnapped my boyfriend out of jealousy. Disclaimer, is not my story time. I sent him on Instagram. After he got into the house, I locked all the doors and windows. I asked him why he was breaking up with me again, and he said that he just wanted some space. That's when I told him that there had to be another woman for him to break up with me. He got really nervous and started getting all red. He denied it, but after 5 minutes, he finally confessed. He said he met someone at work and that he wanted to give her a chance, and that he never meant to hurt me, blah, blah, blah. After about 2 hours of arguing and fighting, he tried leaving. That's when I told him that I wouldn't let him leave until we got back together. I ran out through the back and locked him in. I left him there for 3 hours. When I came back, he had smashed my TV. I told him that he'd never be able to get rid of me, and we ended up getting back together. I kind of feel bad now, but I don't want to give him the freedom to be with someone else. I know this sounds crazy, but I'm right. What should I do? Story time about how I became obsessed with my doctor and faked a heart attack just to see him. Disclaimer, is not my story time. I'm 26 years old and desperate for a husband. I come from a very antiquated family. My parents think I'm already an old maid because I haven't had kids, and that no man will ever want me because I'm too old. For the past 4 years, I've been on a mission to find a husband. I signed up to a bunch of dating apps. I went on so many dates, but still never found anyone I was compatible with, or anyone that wanted to marry me for that matter. Last year, we had a COVID scare in my family and we all went to get tested. I started feeling a little bit sick, so I went to a doctor. This doctor, let me tell you, when he walked into the room, I nearly fainted. He was the most gorgeous man I'd ever seen in my life. He was also so nice because obviously he was my doctor, but he seemed so caring. I quickly became infatuated with him and kept making up excuses to have to go see him. I even came up with this plan that I was going to get him to fall in love with me. I told my mom and she ended up telling my dad and they thought I was completely crazy. I stalked the doctor on social media and found out that he wasn't married. He did have a girlfriend though, but this was no problem for me. I would do my makeup and dress up really nice just to go see him. But this backfired on me. He started to think that I was a hypochondriac and that I was making up all my symptoms. Part 2 of how I became obsessed with my doctor and even faked a heart attack just to see him. Disclaimer, is not my story time. That's when he told me that I was a hypochondriac and that I was probably just imagining/faking all my symptoms. I pretended to act outraged and I said absolutely not. He told me I just needed to relax. But this is the best part. He complimented me on my hair, and that's when I convinced myself that he was in love with me. From that day on, I would follow him everywhere. Anytime he would go to buy coffee, I would end up being there, and we would just casually bump into each other. I thought he wasn't suspecting anything until one day I get home and my parents sit me down to tell me that the doctor noticed that I had been following him everywhere. And he also asked them to find me a new doctor, and that he could no longer see me. I was devastated. I felt like he had broken up with me. My parents forbade me from going near his office, but this didn't stop me. I decided to go straight to his house and confess my feelings. As soon as he opened the door, I told him that I loved him and that I just wanted to have his children. He did not take this very well. He told me to leave. When I got home, my parents didn't let me out of the house for a few days. So I did what I had to do. I faked a heart attack and insisted that the only doctor I wanted to see me was him. My parents had no choice but to take me to him. That's when he told my parents that I had made everything up and that I did not have a heart attack. It's been almost a year and I'm still trying to find ways to get back into his life. I'm running out of excuses. Can you guys help me think of some? Yes, I know this is a little bit crazy, but I know that he could fall in love with me and we would be very happy. What do you think I should do? Storytime about how my girlfriend is addicted to lip fillers, so now she looks ugly and I want to break up with her, but I don't know how. Disclaimer, this is not my storytime. I sent me on Instagram. My girlfriend and I have been together for 2 years. During that time, she's been obsessed with having bigger and bigger lips. When we first met, her lips weren't that thin, but she started watching the Kardashians and pretty much wanted to look like all the models she followed on Instagram. She asked me what I thought about her getting lip filler, and I told her she could do whatever she wants, as long as it didn't change her face. She asked her whole family, but her sisters didn't want her to get the lip filler. They had a feeling that she would get addicted to it, so they told her not to. I thought they were just overreacting, but I was wrong. Last year, she went on a work trip to New York, and while she was there, she secretly got lip filler without telling me or her entire family. She sent me a picture of her new lips, and they actually looked pretty good. It wasn't too exaggerated, they just looked a little bit more plump. But after a few days, she decided to go back and get more lip filler. She said they didn't look big enough and that she just wanted a little bit more. I asked her to wait and not get the second injection, but she ended up doing it anyway. After her second injection, I asked her to send me pictures, but she wouldn't. She said she wanted to surprise me in person. I went to pick her up at the airport and her lips looked really big. She told me that the swelling would go down and that they would look a little bit more normal. Up until this point, I thought she looked really good. They were plump and it was actually really nice to kiss her. A few months later, she brought up the topic again. She told me she needed to even them out on one side, so she found another clinic to go to. They injected her with a lot more than she was expecting, so her lips looked really big. When she turned to the side, she looked like a duck. I started not wanting to kiss her and she noticed. I felt really bad for not wanting to kiss her, but every time I did, I could just feel the filler. It felt fake on my lips. After a few months, she mentioned the lip filler again. I begged her not to get any more and she said she wouldn't. Around Christmas time, I had a holiday party at my office. When my coworkers and my boss saw her, they were stunned. They asked me if that was the same girl that they had met before. I was embarrassed and made up an excuse to go home. Part 2 is up. Part 2 of how my girlfriend is addicted to lip filler. Now she looks ugly and I want to break up with her, but I don't know how. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It's sending me on Instagram. After my coworkers and boss noticed how ugly she looked, I was so embarrassed I decided to leave the party. When we got to the car, I decided to be honest with her and I told her the truth. I told her I hated how big her lips were and how they changed her face and that I was no longer attracted to her. Her reaction surprised me. She acted like she didn't care and told me that she was going to continue doing whatever she wanted to her face. Part of me had to respect the fact that she was doing what she wanted, but it couldn't be healthy to have lips that big. I asked her if we could at least compromise and if she could not get any more filler. That's when she told me that she had already scheduled another lip appointment. She told me she just wanted to change the shape of her lips to make them look more natural. I thought this was maybe going to help her look like her natural self again, but boy was I wrong. We didn't speak for about a week, so the next time I saw her, her lips were doubled the size. It was literally impossible for me not to stare at them. I felt embarrassed being seen with her. Now don't get me wrong, I didn't want to just break up with her because I did love her. I knew I needed to do something. After I saw my girlfriend, I decided to go to her house. I spoke to her parents and her sisters and they all agreed with me that we needed to have an intervention. When she finally arrived home, we showed her pictures of her before and her after. We told her that we loved her face how it was before, and her dad basically begged her not to get any more lip filler. But she took it as a joke and told us that we were overreacting, that nothing was wrong with her face and that she loved the way she looked. And she told me I could use some lip filler myself. Part 3 is up. Part 3 of how my girlfriend is addicted to lip filler and now she looks ugly and I want to break up with her, but I don't know how. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. Send me on Instagram. After her family and I begged her to stop, she told us we were all overreacting and that I should be the one to get lip filler because my lips were thin. I knew she was probably joking, but I was so angry that she wouldn't take us seriously. I stormed out of her house and didn't speak to her for 2 weeks. She called me every single day, but I wouldn't answer. I finally gave in because I really missed her and we saw each other. I tried to look past her Donald Duck lips, but I couldn't. It's like her whole face is being swallowed by 2 pillows. She swore to her family and I that she wouldn't get lip filler anymore. But now she says she wants to get cheek filler. And I know that this is going to lead her to wanting more and more. When I kiss her, they feel so fake and rubbery. I even have nightmares about her new face. A few months ago, I decided to break up with her. But when I talked to her, I just didn't have the heart to do it. I feel like she's going to convince me to stay with her. So I've basically been avoiding her for the past months. Anytime she wants to hang out, I just make excuses. Her sister called me and told me that my girlfriend thinks I'm cheating on her. But I told her I was no longer attracted to her with her big ass lips. Her sister told me that she understood, but that I needed to break up with her face to face. I've written a letter basically saying that I love her, but I can no longer see her the same, but I can't bring myself to giving it to her, much less saying it to her face. I'm hoping you guys can help me out and give me some advice. She wants us to go on a couples trip together, but I'm afraid I'm just gonna stare at her lips all day. I told her I couldn't go on the trip because of work, but that's not true. I feel like maybe starting to act like a bad boyfriend is gonna make her leave me, which will be easier on me. But who knows how long that will take. I've always been such a loyal boyfriend, but I can't take this anymore. I signed up to Bumble and I've been talking to other girls. I'm tempted to go on dates, but I can't bring myself to doing it. Not until I break up with her. But maybe the easier option will be to make her believe that I am cheating on her so that she can break up with me. I feel like such an asshole for saying this, but am I the asshole? Should I stay with her no matter what? Or should I leave her? What should I do?